At Center for Lit, we are devotees of the Socratic method, you might say. You hear us talk a lot about the Socratic method this and the Socratic method that. We use the term to refer to the technique of teaching by asking questions. But of course, since we focus on literature and fiction in particular, the Socratic method has a specific application. We ask questions about the plot of the story, about the protagonist, his desire to overcome an obstacle, the climactic moment of the plot that turns the conflict on its head and leads toward a resolution. Sometimes people ask us about using the Socratic method with nonfiction, and they wonder if those kinds of questions can actually apply just as well to a work of theology or to a work of science. And the truth is that the specific questions that we use to analyze fiction don't apply directly to works of nonfiction, except in the case of, say, biography or history, where the author is, in a sense, a storyteller and puts his material together so that it has a rising action and a climactic moment and a resolution. Biographers do this all the time, right? Human lives are stories. And historians do the same thing, telling the story of the Civil War. They arrange their material, for example, so that it has a climax and a resolution. But it's not quite as applicable to other works of nonfiction, scientific works, theological works, philosophical works. So in what sense does the Socratic method actually apply? How can it be used to read and teach those other things? Well, in a broad sense, I think it's very applicable, because the Socratic method is more than just a list of questions. It's a philosophical stance on the part of the teacher or the reader toward his subject. We read to understand, and the best way to understand is to adopt the position of a learner, to adopt Socrates' position, which is, I know nothing already. I will learn by asking questions. And there are certain questions that you can ask of any book in the world, any work of the imagination in the world, whether it be philosophy, theology, science, or what have you. General questions like this. Is there an argument that this author is trying to make? Is there an assumption about the world from which he is proceeding with his treatment of the subject? Does this assumption, and does the argument that proceeds from it, challenge any assumptions of mine? These kinds of questions can be asked of any work. And the truth is, I should say, the reason these questions can be applied to any work is that every author, regardless of his field, is writing to make a point. He's writing to argue for something. He's writing from a set of assumptions and presuppositions in order to describe the world around him. Our job as readers, again, no matter what the field, is to understand that point, to understand those assumptions, to compare them with our own observations. And so, the Socratic method still applies as, in my opinion, the very best way to come to an understanding of that author who is in conversation with us, talking about a subject of his own choosing and making an argument about it. When we read a book, fiction or nonfiction, we're entering into a conversation with a stranger who, we hope, by the end of the book, will be a stranger to us no longer. And the best way to interact with a new person, with a stranger, is to ask him questions so that you understand him better and, in the long run, understand yourself better. Who is this author? What subject is he treating? What argument is he trying to make about this subject? What assumptions does his argument proceed from? How do these assumptions and this argument challenge or confront my own assumptions about this same topic? Do I think something different about the topic now than I did before I read the story, before I read the work, before I read the argument? What parts of the argument have led me to re-examine my own assumptions? These kinds of questions, though they don't appear on our Socratic list for fiction, are Socratic in the real sense, in the very deepest sense of the word, and they belong in a method that should bear that name, the Socratic method, that I believe should be our method for approaching just about anything. I hope this answer has been helpful. If you have any other questions or thoughts, please communicate with us via the website. Thanks for watching. Until we meet again, my friends, happy reading.